Hello everybody. Welcome and thanks for joining me. It's been a little while since I've taken a stroll here, so thank you for joining me on this one. You can see San Francisco over there. It's I think it's the second day of the year. So Happy New Year's, everybody. And I feel like I've been in a little bit of an incubation period of some kind. I haven't really, this hasn't been that intentional where I've really not been doing much on YouTube, or I think I've made some videos and had some conversations and I just haven't been able to get myself to upload them. Which leads me to believe that I'm on some kind of pause, right? Or a settling into something else before I begin my next, what seems to me is coming up is a upsurge in a lot of activity. In some sense, that's like kind of how creativity works, right? In so many regards, it's anything but linear, right? It's, when Hades opens up and steals Persephone's and the world goes dark during that period of time, and then Persephone's comes back up into the world, and that time of darkness was actually a very deep time in which what was the source of creativity, if you will, was also what was concealed. And it looks like, from a certain perspective, like not a lot's happening. However, a lot was happening. So maybe I'm in one of those periods of time. Who knows? But this little walk I want to is actually kind of a loosely a response to my friend Daniel's last 3 walks, which I've just re-listened to a few times, and him really kind of taking up. Well, there's a lot of things that he talked about, but in all 3 of those videos, I think it's fair to say he really took up and presenced the Greek notion of skole, and in some sense walked with that notion and talked with that notion. And so just to note on what skole, traditionally skole is translated as, most commonly translated as idleness or leisure. However, through the work of Ivo de Janeiro and others, you kind of get that actually those translations, they get at a piece of it, but they don't get at all of it. And essentially, skole is not something that's translatable in full. However, the thing I've come to appreciate about skole is that really it's so about a deep, fundamental relationship to time. And that when one spends time in skole, really you're spending, you could say that you are participating in and of time in a way that opens time itself. Where something to put it really simply, oversimplifying it, or something like where means and ends become the same thing. Where when you're in Skole, there's a sense in which you are doing what you're doing for its own sake. Its ends and means are one. And so in Skole, it's a way, you could say, of holding and bearing time in such a way that you find yourself bared and held by time in the way that you are beholding time itself, right? And the idea is that one should spend as much time as possible in Skole, and that there's nothing easy about that. Right? But it's so important that one should seek to spend as much possible of their time in Skole, because if you do, what you're doing when you do that is realizing the very essence of time itself in the deepest dimension, right? So Skole isn't something that you do occasionally and in doing it separate from everything else. No, it's like it's entering into the depths of time itself and having a direct fundamental relationship to that time that it reveals itself as what's always already happening in a very deep sense all the time. So one is, you could say, is transformed by it. So in other words, Skole is deep. And one of the other things that Daniel's, talking about too in his walks is, precisely that we are in a time in this time of technicity, the age of technology, is what Heidegger would say, Gestell. That is something like Skole can't be found in Gestell. And in some sense, I've been having thoughts about so many different thoughts that if I try to include too many of them here, I'll probably be incoherent. But one of the things, about Gestell, about this time, is it's like, in some sense, there is no time. How time is understood by us is more like a force, like some kind of force that we are acted upon and given by it, but no way can we in turn act upon it and it being at all determined by us, right? So, I think that's kind of like the modern sense of time, is it's like a force of physics or something, right? And the best we can do is kind of measure it and track it, but there's nothing about time in that view that is at all in response to the one beholding time. In other words, I can behold time, but there's nothing that time times out differently in that beholding, right? Yet the Greeks' sense of time, I think, was very different, in which the way that time was could be revealed in and through the way we were. And in some sense, the highest ideal, the highest sense in which, especially you hear this in Aristotle when he says that all theoria happens in skole. And Socrates says that he thought Athens should pay him just to spend as much time in skole as possible. Right? That there's something about that the highest realization of being a human being, right, had something to do with time, right? Such that the more time we spend with time, the more time will be realized, but also the one beholding time will be equally realized. So this quality of that being with time in such a way invites time to reveal itself as what is affording us to be with it in that way, right? It's a very deep sense. And so the more time one spends within skole, the one realizes that all time itself, the nature of what is possible within time itself, is realized. And of course, because the only thing on one level that's always going on is time. Something we're always already in. To open up more of it is to open up everything. Skole. And that precisely something like technology, not technological objects, right? Not the use of technological tools, but precisely when our understanding of time, space, being is understood technologically, is where Gestalt becomes the totalizing force in framing everything that we do. And a way to look at that is where everything, once that happens, you could say that everything becomes what it is and real to the degree that it can be calculated, optimized, commoditized, captured, extended, instrumentalized, i.e. a resource for the consumption and utilization and furthering of that very thing, Gestalt. Everything is a means, right? And is only real to the degree that it can be a resource that can be captured. And in some sense, this is not something anybody is doing. This is the important part, right? To understand is we're not talking about anything any agent is out there planning on or doing called Gestalt or something like that. No, what we're talking about is Gestalt is our way of making sense of everybody, anybody's or somebody or the thing or the world is already shows up for us in that way. And in some sense, the notion of skole, when captured by Gestalt, is something like leisure, right? Where leisure is something like free time that you just can do with whatever you want, right? It's like the same version of time, right? But now it's just empty. versus having to work or something like that, right? Whereas Skole is more like where you take up time in such a way that time itself is realized, right? And in that realization, you see time as something that holds you, affording you to behold it. And that mutual self-disclosure, right? So in some sense, one of the things that interests me and that kind of catches my attention, and I believe is catching Daniel's attention, are in some senses, Skole is something like kryptonite for Gestel. That perhaps when Skole is what takes hold, it's almost like Gestel just can't happen. It doesn't get the oxygen that it needs, or something like that. And so finding points in this time of Gestel where you can notice little gleamings, right? Where being, beauty, non-instrumental rationality breaks through or holds sway for a moment. We should probably pay attention to those and attune to them and be attuned by them. I believe another, you could say, thing that is like kryptonite to Gestel is and it's very, very, I'm sure in a very deep way, very connected to Skole, which is the disposition of wonder. The fundamental or deep disposition of being in absolute wonder.